What you're hearing in the background right now belongs to a genre of music called aleatory music. So, what exactly is aleatory music? Aleatory music, also called chance music or indeterminate music, is the music with some randomness being introduced, in which some elements of the composition is left to chance. In general, aleatory music can be divided into three groups by the following techniques. First of all is the use of random procedures in the generation of a determinate fixed score. An example of this will be John Cage's Music of Changes that uses an ancient Chinese book called I Ching to generate the composition, which I will discuss later in detail in this video. Second of all is allowance of choice to the performers among formal options stipulated by the composer, also called mobile form. An example of mobile form will be Boulez's Piano Sonata No. 3, which has 5 parts that may be played in any of several permutations, and each part contains sections which may be variously ordered or omitted. Last of all is the methods of notation, which reduce the composer's control over the sounds in the composition, also named indeterminate notation. An example of the indeterminate notation will be Morton Feldman's projection series, which uses graphic notations where the register is indicated through the horizontal placement of specific blocks, while duration of specific sonic events is indicated through the length of the blocks along the horizontal axis. The first composer to ever include aleatory composition technique is Charles Ives, and Henry Cowell followed Ives' lead in works such as the String Quartet No. 3 Mosaic, which allows the players to assemble the music from the provided fragments. Cowell's student John Cage began to use what he called chance operations in compositions during the early 1950s. Besides the Music of Changes, another Cage's well-known chance composition is his 433, in which the ambient noise is the random factor that neither the composer nor the performer could control, and the noise is the only thing that the audience can listen to during the performance. While American composers were taking chance music to another level, European composers, on the other hand, held a more conservative perspective. Pieces such as Stockhausen's Cleverstock No. 9 and Boulez's Piano Sonata No. 3 only allow players very limited freedom in choosing the order of the sections, and composers such as Hans and Lutoslawski used aleatory incidents in otherwise determinate compositions. The underlying reason behind this discrepancy is the aesthetics of chance music. In general, the Western music until mid-20th century is considered to have an ideal identity, and the performance might be judged by the extent to which it was held to correspond with that identity. In other words, the expectation of a piece is already constructed when the composer finishes the composition, and the quality of the performance is judged based on that expectation. In aleatory music, that expectation is unclear because composers are not controlling every aspect of the music anymore, and the indeterminacy might cause confusion to both performers and the audience. That is why most European composers, not wanting to break the fundamental conception about music, only operate aleatory techniques on a small scale. However, for American composers like John Cage, the use of chance was more destructive of the traditional notion of the aesthetics of music. Speaking of John Cage, here comes the piece of the day, Music of Changes, which is the piece for solo piano composed in 1951 by John Cage. In this piece, John Cage consulted an ancient Chinese philosophy book called I Ching. Compiled in the 9th century BC during the Zhou dynasty, I Ching is the oldest Chinese philosophy book which later influenced Confucius and integrated with Buddhism and Taoism. In the composition, John Cage consulted the I Ching's randomization methods, dividing yarrow stalks and flipping coins as a source of random choice. Many elements of the piece, such as pitch, rhythm, dynamics, and layers, have been previously associated with the 64 hexagram in I Ching. Cage then would toss the 3 coins 6 times to determine which numbered hexagram to consult. In my own opinion, the I Ching reference in the composition cannot really show the influence that Eastern philosophy had on John Cage and his compositions, because he only took the randomization method from the book instead of referring to the text and trying to understand the meanings behind those hexagrams. What could be a true indication of the Eastern philosophy influence is John Cage's use of silence, that is to be filled by other sounds in the movement, and the lack of control on the part of the composer, which are common in traditional Chinese music and philosophy. Moving on to the 21st century, aleatory music nowadays is commonly present in live looping electronic music and video game music. In a video game, since the music has to respond to players' series of actions which cannot be predetermined, aleatory music, especially the one with mobile form technique, becomes the perfect solution for this issue. The following video clip will demonstrate how it works.
Take the game Flower, for example. In the opening, the background music loops around the key of D. It's quite simple to begin with, until the player begins to interact with the scene, which triggers chords and musical flourishes that are harmonically consonant with that key. Notice also that the lack of a strict rhythm is helping these moments blend together nicely. Here's that same technique again, used in the game Flow. Both of these feel quite similar to the techniques employed in Terry Riley's famous piece In C, which, as the name implies, strictly locks down the key so that other asynchronous rhythmic choices can be made, without the result sounding messy. And then there are games that want strong driving beats in their music. The most common aleatory technique that they use is to first create a library of multiple synchronized loops, and we'll look at the game Luminesce for an example of this. Initially, you can hear an underlying pattern that starts off quite simply. Then, as the level gets harder, to ramp up the feeling of progression, additional layers of percussion and harmony are triggered by the actions the player takes. Then there are also moments where the music is stripped back to just one layer to indicate that a new level is about to begin. I like this because not only does it give you a bit of breathing space to prepare for the next level, it also sort of clears the air for the music so that it can change pace or maybe change the key. And I hope you also noticed how all the moment-to-moment effects and explosions have been tuned to complement the key, another common game technique that really makes it a pleasure to listen to.
As we can see from the clip, aleatory music not only existed in the 1960s as a counterpoint to serialism, but also has a lot of applications in our current music world. I'd like to end this video by a quote from John Cage on his understanding of indeterminacy. Finally, I said that the purpose of this purposeless music would be achieved if people learn to listen. That when they listen, they might discover that they prefer the sounds of everyday life to the ones they would presently hear in the musical program. And that was alright as far as I was concerned. That's it for the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.